Hey everyone, thank you for joining us tonight, and thank you for those of you who logged in last week for our live episode of Thriving with Rachael and Dr. Lou. I know we left off on the topic of motivation last week, I think related to how do I do things even if I'm not motivated, or I think we gave examples of if I'm tired, how do I do things when I'm tired as opposed to I just can't do things when I'm tired. So we wanted to kind of revisit that a little bit today and then answer other questions or topics that might have come up in the last week. So how's your week been going, and related to that, I guess?
As you were talking about that, I was thinking about, what kinds of things have I been trying to motivate myself to do? And, often you and I talk a lot about exercise and health and wellness and stuff like that. And, we've mentioned in previous episodes about how this COVID thing has really thrown me off in terms of going to the gym. And, I tried a different gym, and I didn't really like that gym, and so for the last 2 weeks I haven't been going to any gym, I haven't been exercising, and I was thinking to myself, well, how am I motivating myself to do something that I have a value of, a belief in, something that's important to me? And I think it's important for a couple of things. One, for me, I have to allow myself to not
work out.
Whatever it is that you're trying to motivate yourself to do, there are some days I'm just not going to do what I used to do. And I have to accept that and be okay with that. At the same time, I don't have to be satisfied with it.
Yeah, I was going to say, because as you were starting to talk about it, I was kind of like, where's the line with saying it's okay, giving myself grace, and maybe just never working out.
Right.
But anyways, go ahead.
So my point is, I was thinking also, what kinds of things do I really want to start doing? And so my wife and I have been talking about how she's looking to possibly retire soon, and what we could, and so I started thinking, well, what can we start doing together?
Yeah.
And we used to play tennis, and I've been playing golf more, and so that's exercise to me, that's fun. And so I would love to start doing more of that. And maybe that's another way, it's a shift in exercising, the way I think, with the visual of what is it that I'm looking to do. And I can do both, right? I don't have to just go to a gym. I can golf, I can play tennis, I can take walks, I can ride bikes, I can hike. We can do more things that kind of still achieve my value of exercising and maintaining a certain level of health. And that's, I went out to lunch the other day with a good friend of mine. I took him out for his birthday, and we were chatting, and he's somebody I used to work out with, and he's still going to the gym. And I'm like,
what was that like?
I was like, God, I remember those days, and I kind of missed that camaraderie and wanting to go back and hang out together and do that.
Schedule, and you're in your element, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, you mentioned before, this is all before COVID, everything was just kind of in a system. And I mean, I've talked about that before too with regard to health and wellness. I was in very much of a system where, I had a schedule with what I did as far as going for walks or doing yoga or, doing a workout. And I think you're right, it definitely shifted, but it is interesting when I'm off of it and kind of reflecting back on it. I think a lot of us say, I need to get back to that.
Yeah.
When it sounds like what you're saying is, I'm not trying to get back to any type of thing. I'm trying to redefine, what it is, because the value is still there. I still value fitness.
Yes.
But it's kind of like, what does fitness mean to you, I guess, is what I think I'm doing.
And to me, fitness and health kind of incorporates the idea of movement, being active, being somebody who's kind of energized to do things throughout the day. And I also like my downtime, at night, I don't really like to do anything. Come 8 o'clock, give me a movie, sometimes I'll read a book, we'll play a game once in a while.
Too much logical thought there, maybe.
Yeah. But there's definite times where I either want to be down and relaxed and just not doing much of anything, not really thinking, and then other times where I want to be really active and involved in things and moving. And so trying to balance that and trying to keep that in my mind as to how do I plan my day is important to me.
Yeah. And I like the idea, you're sort of alluding to this idea of giving myself permission. And I think I'm curious from you guys, how often do we give ourselves permission to just do certain things or not do certain things. You know, I think it's the constant comparison sometimes of where I am, what I'm doing, versus what I think I should be doing or what I plan to maybe do. And I think that constant comparison is what oftentimes gets us stuck. I mean, at least it gets me stuck a lot of times, you know, because I mean, there's on a daily basis right now, I've been very much, I want to work out, and so I've moved my weights into different rooms in the house, and I've had it on my schedule differently, and it's almost like, it just feels like every time, or at least that's the dialogue, every day I have this plan, and every day it doesn't work out. But it doesn't stop there, you know, it goes into my evening, and I'm like, oh, here you go again, you didn't do it again, and you know, it's not even that big of a deal, and oh, the other night, you know, you did 10 minutes, and it was really great, and why aren't you doing it again? And then even the one time I did do it, I was, you know, working with my daughter was awake and not sleeping like usual, and so I was like, well, let me just do something fun, because she loves when I'm jumping, so like, let me just do a couple of plyometric type things, and I was sore the next day, and I was like, wow, only 10 minutes, that's, you know, not creative, you know, like, it's like no matter what, my brain is just kind of like, you're not doing it well enough comparative to what it used to be or how what I expected myself, I guess. And I'm not sure if that's something you can identify with, not just with working out, but with other things as far as never feeling like it's good enough, you know?
Absolutely.
Or letting yourself off.
So a lot of what I go to is start to identify with the idea that, am I thriving? Am I enjoying what I'm doing? Right? What's the goal here? What's really the value? If it is to exercise or to have fun or to do whatever X is, are we doing that? Now sometimes we get caught up in that comparison. Well, that's not what I used to do. Or that's not what my buddy's doing. Or that's not what they're doing. You know, we have to look at our own viewpoint as to what's good for us, what's important to us, and how we visualize that. And I think that's how we thrive. You know, how you thrive might be different than how I thrive. And, you know, as you were talking, and as I was talking as well, I was wondering, if you're not exercising and you're not doing it the way you used to, are you still thriving?
That's a good question. I guess it depends on what your vision of thriving is. You know, I sometimes when I get stuck, have a very all or nothing focus on thriving. So my ideal of thriving is I'm eating the way I want to, and I'm working out, and I'm always energetic no matter how much sleep I get, and I can stay up late and wake up early, and kind of like this rock star mentality of like you can do it all. And you know, some days I can, some days I power through, and that's it. But I wonder if sometimes I need to adjust even the visual of thriving. You know, like what do you think of?
Well, thriving? I started thinking the same thing. That you know, we've learned a lot this year in 2020. And one of the main lessons that I've learned is the importance of adaptability and flexibility. And I think it's really important for us to know that thriving, to me, varies. You know, some days I may not have the energy to do everything that I want to do. To me, doing as much as I can, given where I am on the continuum, if you will, is thriving. So today, if I don't have that much energy, and I only do half of what I do tomorrow, I still see myself as thriving both days.
How do you do that, though? Because I think, again, back to that comparison, I should be doing more. Or I might question myself and say, well, why can't you? The answer might be you're tired. Okay, well, why do you get enough sleep? Well, you know, why don't you go to bed earlier? You know, and it's, so I'm curious how you navigate that.
Well, because if I find myself asking all those why questions, then I start to realize I'm stuck. And I don't like to be stuck. So I start to notice that question, and then I start to look at it from a different perspective. And I can say, I didn't get enough sleep. I stayed up because friends were over, or we decided to binge watch something, or whatever. Or I had to get up early, so I didn't get the same amount of sleep. I can explain a lot of reasons, but I'm still not tired, or I'm still tired.
Well, so it's kind of like the what about now then? Like, what do I do now? Because we could look at the
that's
why.
What's important.
We could look at what led us. Yeah. And I think, so maybe more so that's the automatic tendency. So the automatic tendency might be, I didn't do it well enough, or all the reasons why it's not enough, or what could contribute to why it's not good enough. And so maybe what I'm hearing you say, and something that I try to do a lot, is not necessarily what can I learn from the why, but kind of like a look back, don't stare policy. Recognize what might have contributed, and then use that as information moving forward. So if I'm tired because I didn't get enough sleep, I didn't drink enough water, I'm not eating enough, whatever it might be, okay, use that as information. You know, maybe
Right.
I need to eat more, or structure my meals better, or make sure I always have my water bottle with me, or try my hardest to get the kids to sleep so I can go to sleep on time, you know? And so using it as information as opposed to using it as a shame game, I think is important.
That's very key. I think that's another area where many of us get stuck, is we start beating ourselves up, going through that game game of blaming, and that's not really helpful to us, right? It just makes us feel worse. And sometimes that's motivating, right? We're starting to talk about motivation. We don't like how we're feeling, so we're motivated to do something about it. That can be helpful.
Keep that sustainable though. You know, is
I guess it
motivating
depends.
myself by beating myself up sustainable? Or is, I guess, better question, do I want that to be the way I motivate myself?
I think that's the better question. I think that's much more valuable, and because then that puts us in control, right? Then we're making an intentional choice. This is how I want to motivate myself. This is what I've determined helps me the most. It allows me to thrive the most when I do it this way. And I think that's important for us to always be checking in with ourselves and evaluating how are we managing our day-to-day life, and how does that contribute to us thriving. You know, as we were just talking about that, I'm wondering if some of the people watching are questioning, do we always have to thrive?
Or does thriving always have to look this way?
Yeah.
That's a good question. But I guess you're the one who gets to answer that, which is the beauty of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
And, you know, I'm kind of playing devil's advocate here. I'm trying to think of this as, if I'm watching and I'm hearing us talk, somebody might then say, well, you're constantly changing the game plan, right? Like it's always just to suit you.
But isn't that the purpose? That's kind of the point.
Yeah. But then somebody might say, well, aren't you focusing in on denial then? And being delusional with, like, are you really thriving then and enjoying life if you're constantly changing the expectation level? And
I guess, and not to sound dismissive, but does that part matter? Is this real or is it not? Why don't you just sit with it for a second? You know, like it's kind of like when we were talking about beliefs a couple weeks ago, and we were saying, you know, do you believe in yourself or in your being capable of things versus maybe not being capable? Like last week we talked about, you know, if you're tired, you know, can you still do things, or do you have a belief that, you know, when I'm exhausted I can't do as much? You know, versus when I'm tired, it just takes extra effort, but, you know, I can do it, or I can do it differently if I'm tired. I think it goes back to playing into the beliefs that we have about ourselves, and which one are we reinforcing? Because what I'm hearing you do is question it constantly. And if we're constantly questioning our reality, then are we really in the moment? Are we really present with just what it is? Because what I hear you doing is sort of putting a swing on it, or a perception. You're like changing the perception around what it is. Like, is this really that good, or like, could it be better? Well, it could be better, but let's instead of comparing, like, what just is it right now? You know, because I could compare, you know, the weather.
True.
And on a normal day, I'd prefer it to be sunny. But do I like a rainy day sometimes? Sure. But if I compare it, which one do I like better? You know, that's where it starts getting tricky. And so, I don't know if it has to do with which one's real or which one. I don't know if that's answering your question. What are your thoughts?
well, it's making me think that, you know, one, we have to have balance. We have to have flexibility again. And we get to look at things from our perspective and be in charge of it then, because we're deciding on our perceptions, we're deciding on our expectations, we're deciding on whether it's good enough. And if we can be intentional with that and recognizing day to day how my ability level, my energy level, my motivation level changes, then accepting where I am today and making the most of that, that allows me to thrive.
Because it goes back to which one's helpful in thriving.
Yeah.
You know, because I guess that's maybe what I was thinking earlier is instead of fact checking and seeing if this is reality or if this is truth, just ask yourself, is this helping me? You know, when I compare, for instance, is it helping? It could.
Could.
It just depends in this moment, you know, what's the function of comparison, you know? And so I think it really goes back to what you said, like the continuum. Am I moving in a more helpful direction or a less helpful direction? It's not right or wrong, good or bad on the continuum. It's just in a direction that I prefer or in a direction I maybe wouldn't prefer as much, right? But again, gives us information. I can do something that's more preferred, but it might be hard and it might not feel good.
Mhm.
I could also be on the other end of the continuum and do things that I'd prefer because they're, you know, path of least resistance and they perceivably feel great. But it's not what I prefer values-wise.
Yeah.
You know, so I think it goes back to what's more helpful in contributing to how I want to thrive, maybe, instead of questioning the truth around things, because it's my truth,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. I think that's a good lesson to learn and to be aware of. Not always easy to follow.
Yeah.
But it's good, definitely good to keep in mind. And I guess part of that has to do with, you know, each day, how do I want
To show up.
to show up? How do I want to present myself to others? How do I want to be? And a lot of that has to do with being in the moment, being present, being mindful of, you know, some of the contributing factors to where I am today and how I'm showing up. And then also, how do I want to use that in forming my plan for the day? Now, somebody may sometimes think of that as, well, do you get up every day and like actually think about your plan? No.
Well, it's interesting you say that though, because one thing I have actually been trying that one of my friends challenged me to probably like a week ago at this point, is not necessarily planning the day, but setting intention for the day. And I found that that's really been helpful because it keeps me accountable. And it is because I forget sometimes, but it's great because I check in with her every morning. Like we leave each other just messages just to kind of check in. And so like if she texts me first or something, then I'm like, oh, I forgot, you know, I missed a day. And I'm like, wait, what were my intentions for yesterday? And so in the beginning, I like just said it. I didn't actually do anything with it. I just was like, yeah, this sounds great. I'm going to work out. I'm going to, you know, be, you know. And after a while, I realized I'm just telling her my to-do list. I wasn't actually setting intentions. So we shifted that more to, you know, what's your mindset going to be? What are you going to focus on? And it's been a crazy transition, actually. Just in a week of telling her every day I'm going to work on staying present, and every day it got a little bit closer, or I guess further away from the next time I was reporting to her. And I remembered, like, are you being present? What are you about to tell her? Like, are you going to tell her that you've been being present, or not so much? And each time it got further and further away, and kind of got it sort of put into my day, which has been really awesome, actually. And so not necessarily planning my day as far as like 8 to 9, 9 to 10,
right.
But it has been a really cool shift in my mindset the past couple of weeks that now just reflecting on it, I've really been valuing.
I bet that helps you to be much more mindful and present.
It does. And when I'm not, I notice it.
Yeah.
It almost opens up the possibility for choice in the matter of whether or not I want to be there or not, you know?
Did it take long to notice that?
It took a good week, yeah, for sure. And it took being present on that text or on that call when I was saying like, oh, I didn't do it again, like, you know.
That is so key to me, is to have that support, that kind of that person that can kind of hold you accountable in some way, pleasantly, nicely, right?
I was gonna say, she never says like, oh, did you do it? It's just something we do. Like, I'm just literally recording this and it just goes off. Like, I don't think, she never says like, did you do it necessarily, but just the fact of saying it. Like, I honestly think if I recorded it in my phone, just in my audio, whatever, I think, you know, just saying it out loud.
I wonder if you'd be willing to try a week without checking in with your friend to compare it, right?
Yeah.
Because I don't know, but you know, fortunately you have that person that you can check in with. Not all of us have that person to check in with. So how does that person thrive when we don't have that support?
So I wonder, instead of just cutting it off, I wonder if I did what I just said, maybe recording it on my audio, whatever the app is, and just maybe check, like that's kind of a thing that I do, because I've kind of gotten myself in the habit when I started going back to work and driving to work versus working from home, which accountability totally shifted when I was not going to work, but that's kind of become a habit. So I wonder if it's the accountability from her or if it's me intentionally setting that up at the beginning of my day. So that's an
I would be
willing.
experiment.
I'd be willing to do the experiment. All right, I'll have to let her know.
That kind of also brings up a question that I know others have asked me. I don't know if people have brought this to your attention. When there's a sparsity of resources for me, if I don't have that friend, I don't have money, I don't have transportation, I don't have, a therapist, I don't have family, I don't have a job. Like, how can we still thrive, be true to our values and our beliefs when I don't have all of that or some of that?
So when my circumstances, when things are maybe not agreeing or supporting my values in the way I imagined, how do I still thrive anyway, or how do I still reinforce those values anyway?
Yeah, because not just verbally in my head reinforce it, but live it.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, that's a good question because it goes back to changing the experience, and I know we talked about this, way back in the beginning of when we started, but the idea that you can't just change what you think about. You can't just change what you do.
Right.
You got to change the whole thing. You got to change what you're focused on, what you're doing.
Thoughts and action.
Yeah, because your experience won't change otherwise.
Yeah.
You can't just do one or the other. Just like my friend can't hold me accountable and then I just don't do it.
Right.
What's the point? And I tell my clients that all the time. You could come here to group every day and we can have a really good discussion and you can feel really motivated when you leave, but if you're not changing, what are we doing? If you're just feeling good in group, which is great, 2 hours of your day, that's awesome, but the group's not forever, and neither is this group today. And so what are you doing with the rest of that time? And so I think that's a really good question, maybe worth exploring in our next podcast, because I think a lot of people run into that. And it goes back to that idea too, that it maybe shifts my belief in my ability to do certain things. So if I don't have things lining up like a friend that would hold me accountable, or certain circumstances aren't, I guess, playing, if the cards aren't, what am I trying to say?
I'm not getting the best cards.
Hand, maybe. Can I still do it? How do I shift my belief to believing that I can thrive? Even if circumstances don't dictate that I can.
Tough question to answer.
I think it's a good one, though.
I guess we're going to have to think about this one.
I think it's a good one to explore, and maybe even exploring our own lives. Is there things that would make it easier that we don't have that maybe we could touch on next week too?
Sure.
So yeah, that's a good point.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us again. Look forward to seeing everybody next week. And as always, if you have questions or comments, feel free to let us know.
Thanks, guys.